say that. Okay, is everybody ready? We have 4. I think we have. You guys ready? We have quorum. Hopefully we'll have Dick show up, but we're ready to go because we've got a long agenda. And welcome to the November 19th, 2015 Downtown Design Review Committee. We're happy to have you here. We have a big agenda today, so please be conscious of other people's time. And first item on the agenda is roll call.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner. Charles Ainsworth. Corey Bates. Connie Scothorn. And Richard Tannenbaum. You have a quorum.
Great. We have no continuance requests. We have nothing on the consent docket. Oh, wait. Sorry. I assume you all have read the minutes. And, okay. We've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes from last meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Next item. There is one case withdrawn. It is 25 Northwest 9th Street. That's correct, right? Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. Sorry. I've got it. Okay. I would like to, thank you. There is one case withdrawn. It is very complicated. It's a railroad piece.
This is the railroad project, the closures, and there were some changes to the street configurations that was on last month's agenda, but it wasn't noticed correctly, so we pulled it off. And in the meantime, it was pointed out that the railroad work does not require a CA, so it has been withdrawn. So you won't see it again.
Okay. Sorry about that. We have no continuance request. We have 2 items on the consent docket that I would like to move and group with the additional item. These are items about the streetcar substations, and we will move those to further into the docket. Yes, after item H. So starting with cases for individual consideration, we have item A, which is 1116 North Robinson. Is the applicant present? Can you come forth and tell us your name while Laura is telling us all about her impressions of this?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Larry Pickering, 422 Northwest 9th.
Great.
Before you is a request for 2 items. One is for painting brick, and the other is, well, actually 3, putting in a walk-in cooler and screening for the walk-in cooler. In the staff report, we go over this project, the specific walls that are involved in this project for the painting. The building previously had some blue awnings on it. They were removed. This is a picture that was taken. They were taken after the awnings were removed. And then the request for painting is to the gray, as you see on the left, and then on the right you have a picture of the walk-in cooler. Some of the red brick, which is more on the back of the building, is proposed to be retained, which you can see in the pictures. And then we have pictures of the surrounding area, which is up on North Robinson. The proposal for the screening of the walk-in cooler is for metal, which you see a picture of here, to be painted black and to actually be mounted on that material that the cooler is made out of. Staff is of the opinion that this does not meet what the code recommends, which is the same material as the primary structure, which in this case is brick. And so that is one of the things you'll see in the report is staff recommends that the cooler be screened with a brick material instead of the metal material. And we recommend that they be required to come back to staff for that and not have to come back to you. We also recommend approval of the proposal and have cited some sections of the code that deal with the request. There were some additional information that was also provided to you about other projects in that area and clarification on some information that was included in the staff report that you all received.
Okay, thank you. Larry, can you explain to us the project? Can you present the project, explain your thoughts about painting the brick? Do you have a visual presentation for us?
I do not have a visual presentation, since this was documented in the staff report fairly well as far as the visual. When we removed the awnings that were there, the brick underneath was painted. We had gone in, and there's two different processes here. I'm doing the interiors of the project, and the application for the exterior was done on a previous contractor, and a revision was made by that previous contractor. So in that documentation, we had a note and a list of the revisions that stated painting the entire building. So I came in with the understanding that that was approved. I conversed with staff at that time and was under the understanding that that was approved. So we proceeded to paint the building. So that's kind of where we're at on the exterior.
Can you verify that, please?
Yeah, in the CA attachments that were approved for that, all of the drawings have a note saying paint the west facade brick to be buff. And then there's a written scope of work that says paint the entire building. So there was conflicting information at the time we packaged it all out. We didn't realize that. We were focused in on the paint the west facade buff because it was explained to us that once the awnings were removed, that the brick behind the awnings had previously been painted at some point in time. And then part of that whole revision was to add another pilaster to replace one that had been removed sometime in the past. So when they replaced that, they couldn't match the brick. So between the two colors of brick and the previously painted brick, the applicant wanted one color, to make it one color. Now the CA, we typically don't get too particular about the color, but the CA clearly said buff, and what was painted was gray. Also, the CA did not, it said that the brick was going to be painted. It didn't say anything about the cast stone. So I think there were mutual misunderstandings about the scope of work that was approved.
Okay.
So in summary, we painted the building.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant?
I have one other thing,
Okay.
Betsy, on item number 2 in regards to the screening. We had previously had talked, the owner, the tenant, had previously discussed combining waste services with the church. There's several dumpsters in the alley, and in that conversation, we decided that we were going to proceed with a dumpster enclosure that would probably be around by the walk-in cooler. So the perforated metal is off the table. We're going to come back with a revision with a brick screen wall. We have to put in a transformer for the power anyway, so there's some other things. So we're going to enclose the dumpsters, and we'll probably place another dumpster in there for the church's use and get one of the dumpsters out of the alley. So
So what, my understanding of what Lisa just explained is that we don't really have to vote on all of the masonry except for the cast stone elements. Is that correct?
No, we've brought before you kind of the whole thing again. The current scope of work that is proposed to be done, we're asking for the committee to vote on that scope of work.
So even though it's been approved,
That was,
you're asking us to vote on it anyway?
We're saying that another scope of work was approved, is staff's position. The scope of work that was approved by staff was the painting of the west facade, period.
Okay. Thank you. Huh? Okay.
I just have one question. Do we know the reasoning for painting the cast stone in addition to the brick?
that goes under the revision that we had previously understood to be approved, the painting the entire building. The cast stone, as it were, was in various states of finishes. We could have probably cleaned that up a bit, but it was determined by the tenant with the painter to include that in the painting process, since we had originally, again, had the perception of approval for painting the entire building.
Just for the record, I am very unhappy that that building was painted.
Noted.
And, but I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. Chuck, a motion?
Well, if this were to be approved, does this set a precedent, or can this be approved in a way that doesn't set a precedent, that, you know, buildings don't just get painted and then after, you know, then we sit here with another project that just got painted and it's after the fact, and they look back at potentially this case and point to it as precedent?
Now, I would suggest making the motion, for example, to approve with the unique circumstances that, whatever those unique circumstances are, so that you can record that there is a specific finding for this case that may not apply to others.
Okay, and before your motion, is there anyone from the gallery that would like to speak to this? Okay.
I'll give this a shot. Seems to me like we fumbled the ball here, so I don't think we should penalize the owner for that. So I would move to approve with the stipulation that this not set a precedent for future projects and that we'd be a little more cautious next time. That's it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
And can I just clarify, because the staff had recommended a condition in there relative to the screening of the walk-in cooler. The information about the dumpster was not even included in this.
That's right.
So I don't know how you want to address that in your motion.
Continue that. They said that they want to bring that back to us, so.
Okay, so we're just addressing
That
the
is part of your
painting?
motion.
I'm sorry, could you confirm, so we're suggesting the staff report, there's a guideline that the walk-in cooler be screened. And
Right.
they're proposing metal, we're proposing brick to match the building. The item on the dumpsters is not part of the items for consideration.
Okay, so Larry said that they're going to come back with the screening material at a later date.
Yes.
Yeah, so we need to continue.
Them too.
I just thought you said it wasn't part of that. Okay. And we'll move to continue the screening for the transformer dumpster.
Do you agree with that for your second? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
30.
30?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're off to a rocky start. Okay. The next item, 6B, 903 West Sheridan. I did get that right? Is the applicant present? It looks like the applicant's present. Yeah. Want to come talk to us? Laura, or do you want to?
I'll introduce the
Okay.
next 4 cases are for the sidewalk, streetscape, signage, lighting for the residences, for which that's the Fred Jones area mixed-use development. The main buildings were approved several months ago, and now we're bringing back the streetscape and signage. One nuance to all of these was, staff believes that the signage matches the scale of the buildings. I mean, these are big buildings, on a really big city block scale, but they technically are larger than what is allowed by the regulations, because you're allowed less signage on residential uses. So I think all of these have a condition or have a recommendation for a variance.
Okay, thank you. Hello?
Mark Tolson, Arrive Architecture Group, here to answer any questions if you have them. Pretty straightforward request today.
Can you go ahead and, we've got the drawings up, can you go ahead and walk us through where the various elements are?
Sure, we can do that.
And if you could just include the entire site, that would be
Okay, yes.
fabulous.
So we have 4 buildings, 2 on Main, 2 on Sheridan, and our streetscape signage and lighting are very consistent through all 4 buildings. We're also coordinated with the Museum Hotel, so we have the similar trees, similar lighting. The first exhibit you see before you is the lighting plan. And so we're continuing along the streets. The Project One, it's very tiny to see. I had to get the lamp at the hotel last night and window in myself. So continuing the Project 180 street lights along Sheridan and Main and along Fred Jones. So those are a consistent pattern with what the city's requiring. Around each building, there are wall-mounted floodlights. One of our directives from the owners was a great deal of lighting. So we've and as you can see, we've given you the photometric on the next page. So it's going to be very comfortably bright in that part of the world. But we've got lighting all around all sides of the buildings. That's the little A. You can't see that probably, but that's what the number is. And then one of the most exciting thing is our festoon lighting down Fred Jones that'll go between the buildings on both sides. And that'll be a bulb-type lighting that's on cables that extends. That's that X running down the center there. We also have that on the Paseo between Building C and the music venue. Those are overhead lights. And then there's a mark for a light at each building entry. So that's the lighting. Pretty straightforward stuff. The festoon lights, the plan now is to have clear bulbs. That's the style that we're doing, similar to what we're doing at Steelyard in Bricktown. So that's the lighting. You can see the photometrics. The owners are very happy with that. The next thing we have is our landscape package. And it's, again, the streetscapes continue the Project 180 style. There's bald cypresses on Sheridan, which is the tree that the hotel is using, and in regular planting beds with hollies and different ground cover materials there. We've got bald cypresses going down Fred Jones, the same type of streetscape there. And then on Sheridan, we have oak trees. So we have Summert oak trees on all the streets down Sheridan. and we are extending the streetscape slightly past our site. If you go to the next one, well, go back. Sorry, go back. Sorry. Oh, that you see that. So we're extending it past this way. One of the most exciting things is the dog park. So you can see the plan of the dog park, some of the plantings that are in that. One of the things the owners really wanted was a screen from the west, so we've got a pretty heavy screen of crepe myrtles down that fence line. We've got some playscape elements in there, some dog park things, some covered areas at a playground, so that's how the dog park will be. That's the plan right now that we're doing. So pretty straightforward landscaping plan. Obviously, we have interior courtyards and things that you're not seeing that are they're designed actually, and we're submitting for permit pretty soon. The signage, go to the signage sheets, just kind of walk you through those. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Obviously, we have 4 buildings. This is building C, and obviously the signage on the garage is the banners on the garage are not part of this process, but you can see we've essentially got marks at all the garage entries, building entries. All the leasable spaces have a sign in front of them on the first floor, and then most buildings have a blade sign and an entry sign at their lobbies. And so that's kind of what Lisa was inferring. There's a fair amount of signage, but there's a lot of entries and a lot of things going on. So that's building C. You can see the blade sign there at the corner on Sheridan. It's fairly large. It's in the dimensions of everything is in the package. So pretty consistent. We can go on and that's building C. And so pretty much all of them have the same kind of process. There's an entry sign. Even the live workspaces have a little sign in front of them for those 4 tenants to be able to advertise whatever they're doing in their live workspace. So we think it's a very tight proposal, and we appreciate your consideration of it.
Okay. Thank you. Any question? I have a question. We don't have any issues with the size of the sign. It's appropriate for the size of the building and the regulations, the sign regulations.
No, I think the signage package as proposed is a good one. I think it fits the scale of the building, but it does not technically meet the letter of the regulations. The signs are too big, and there's too many of them.
Okay.
So that in the on page 4 of the staff report is the language for the variance, and it's for the maximum directional sign area. The directional signs are the enter and exit signs into the garage, which normally are not an issue. These are larger than what is allowed.
Okay.
Then number of accessory signs for residential buildings. In this area, you can only have 1 per facade, and they have 2. And maximum sign area. That was the blade sign. Like the only thing that met the letter of the law was the tenant signs.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
I do have a couple questions about the west side of the site and how it addresses Classen. Do you know what the distance is between the fence for the dog yard and the dog park and the curb to Classen?
Let me see.
It's about 30 feet.
The easement's 30 feet.
They had to get a variance because it's OG&E right away.
Okay.
But you're right, that facade, per the downtown regs, is required to be at or within 10 feet of the street right of way, but because of that utility easement, they couldn't, so
Okay.
they received a variance
So
a couple
we're
months.
sitting about 30 feet from the right-of-way edge, and the right-of-way is sort of hinky in there, so it's about 40 feet is that dog park.
I think given that condition, that's actually better just from a pedestrian standpoint to be able to come off of Classen if you want to. And then in that area is where I believe the floodlights are going. Could you speak to maybe the configuration of the floodlights and how that area would be illuminated?
The dog park is for residents only, so, and it's only going to have, daytime hours, so it's only going to have daytime. So we have lights that go down the garage and really no other lights in that area, and they'll be on, 24 hours a day. The flood lighting will be, but we're closing the dog park after dark, so, for the residents.
Is the flood lighting the park, or is it lighting the facade of the building?
It is lighting down on the ground.
Okay.
You're out of luck, yes. And that may change eventually, but right now we're not lighting it we just don't want people hanging out there.
So, Corey, the sidewalk actually is right on Classen for pedestrians.
The sidewalk itself?
Looks like it.
Yes, it runs outside of our fence, yes.
I wanted to make sure that the new fence for the dog park didn't pin somebody against that sidewalk.
No, you've got about 10 feet till our fence,
Okay.
so
There's a relief there.
it's a really big right-of-way there.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Are there any questions from the gallery? Do we have any motions? Oh, yeah, Connie, can't believe you didn't say something earlier.
No, I think everything's fine. I was going to move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and the guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant receive a variance to the maximum directional sign area, number of accessory signs, and maximum sign area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code.
So is this for 6B?
Well,
We've got to.
Can we do them all at once?
Separately.
oh, okay.
Sorry, this is going to be a long process, so.
Okay. And I move that is this a second motion or?
Yeah, we need to vote on it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion from Scowthorne and second from Ainsworth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good job. Now,
I move that we get a recommendation for approval to the Board of Adjustments for variance to the maximum directional sign area, number of accessory signs, and the maximum sign area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code. I wish I had started.
okay.
To do them all.
So that would be item C.
No, she was voting on
6B.
6B.
We just voted on 6B. Yeah. Did you include the variance in your motion?
She included the condition for the variance.
Oh, okay.
She didn't include the recommendation.
Okay, and do we have a second on that? And we've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So the variance is approved. Now, we're moving on to 6C.
Six C has a similar but slightly different recommendation on page 3 of the staff report.
So can I go ahead and make a motion?
Actually,
Oops.
I do have one comment on 6C.
Okay?
Regarding the north elevation, the parking sign to get into the garage, this one is much higher than what's on the first building as far as being off the ground. And I was wondering if there was a way to potentially pull that down closer to the streetscape level.
Mark, would you like to address that, please?
Get there and find it. So 6C is building B, and you're saying the parking sign above, the blade sign above the parking?
Yes.
Well, it's actually on, if there's not a whole lot of, I mean, I guess we could put it on the first floor, but it's actually just right above the parking area, so I don't know where we,
Corey, what's your concern? Is it that it's not going to be readable for?
No, that it was getting high enough that it was moving away from the pedestrian scale. If it's starting at 14 feet off the sidewalk, finishing at 22 feet up in the air, if there was a way to potentially pull that down.
yeah, I think so. I think we could do that.
More in line. I think the first building, it was only 8 feet off the ground.
Yeah, typically they're above the parking entry, so, so the entry, this is just a taller entry because it's the podium building. It's going into a 12 or 13-foot ceiling building. That's why it's higher. I mean, we could potentially move it to the side of the garage where it was on the first floor. I mean, I don't think we have a real issue with that if that's something you would like, so.
That was my only comment.
Okay. You want to do a motion and include some statement about that?
I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the conditions that A, the applicant receive a variance to the maximum directional signage area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code, and B, that the sign on the north side is reviewed for potentially moving down. And 2, I also move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance to the maximum sign area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Connie just seconded that. All in favor? Any opposed? Do you have a motion for approval to, or the recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment?
He combined
You
it.
include it? Okay, good deal. Next item, item 6D. We need a motion and a second.
I actually have comments on this as well.
Okay, good.
So on this building, the two signs that jumped out were the ones that are very far up on the facades of the building. On the west end, I understand the context for the height of that, as the west end of the building does face Classen. I think that you can make the argument that the height of that is relative to the scale and the car traffic that's driving by on Classen. The other sign on the east side of the garage, excuse me, that faces south, when I was going through this packet and seeing the previous buildings, when I got to this, my expectation based on the other buildings was that this would actually be a blade sign that was perpendicular to the sign that's above the entryway, similar to what's happening on the building that's on Sheridan. And I was wondering what the reasoning was for placing this sign so high on the east side of the garage, or the east end of the garage facing south, considering you have the entry sign, and that this area is more geared to the pedestrian compared to Classen, which is geared towards the vehicle.
I think the thinking was that parking blade sign was obviously getting it up off the pavement so it wouldn't have any accessibility issues, of anybody bonking into it. It needs to be 80 inches off the ground minimum to do it. And I think the thinking was to keep the signage the same, and so that's sort of where it was. So it's prominent enough. It's a really big garage, and lots of people coming in and out of there. So I think that was the thinking on that, was to, kind of, it's not gigantic, but it kind of
I think we're talking about two different ones, not the entry to the garage.
Right.
The one over the stairwell.
Yes,
The big one that says the residence is A.
right there, yeah, we have the mouse over it now.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, sorry, I was on the wrong building. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think the thinking there was to have it on the Fred Jones view corridor. I think that's what we were thinking, was that to take up some of that blank space. It also helps kind of accessorize the garage, and it does line up on the Fred Jones view, that little bump. And so the thought was, you had to go ahead and kind of give it some upper presence there. And so that's kind of what our thinking was just a nice way to also help break up a fairly long building, too. It's kind of a good place for a sign. I guess that's a great thing. You can see it down the way, you can see it coming and going, and it's a vertical space versus a horizontal space, so that's why we went with a vertical sign, just to bring some variety to it.
I understand the view corridor down Fred Jones. I guess my only concern is that it gets billboard-esque, being that high up in the air. I don't know if anyone else.
Where is that sign on the
This,
plan?
oh, so.
Yeah, Corey, can you help Paula, or Mark, could you help Paula figure out where on the,
It's on
So-
the sheet 502 on the bottom elevation. So it's kind of on the edge of the parking garage that's there with the facade. It helps sort of just, if you will, accessorize that garage there. It lines up down the corridor of Fred Jones looking north.
so on the plan, on sheet E1.101, where would that occur?
Yeah, if you look at the site plan, it would be, yeah, literally looking right there, that edge, that corner of the gray garage, that southeast corner.
I'd like to see it on the site plan, though, actually. I think I know what you're getting ready to point at, but I'm not sure I like it. Yeah. I think that Corey has a good point. It's a very large sign. If you could downscale the sign, I think it'd probably be better. It's hard to read this, obviously, but it's only 3 feet wide, is that right?
Yes, it's 69 square feet.
But is it 21 feet tall?
Yes. So it's fairly tall.
And how much of it is lit?
It's internally lit, so the whole thing's going to be lit. The letters, will glow behind the back of it.
There's some options there, Mark, as far
Sure.
as reducing the size.
We would consider that, reducing it. It was a recommendation by the sign folks that do a lot of our projects. They said it's a nice place to have some pop. It helps that corridor. I don't know if we're married to it or not. We just thought it was kind of a neat thing to be able to see on one of our largest structures,
Considering that view corridor down Fred Jones, if the I think it's Feston, the Feston lights, the string lights, are crisscrossing above the street, I think your view of that sign would probably be obscured anyway.
Yeah, you will be looking through the festoon lights to see it, correct.
Can you work on that one?
Sure, yes, we can definitely do it.
Did you have any other comments, Corey? Okay. Want to make a motion?
Before you motion, are you going to suggest that they just shrink it a certain percentage or bring it back?
I mean, if I were to make a suggestion on the design of the sign, I would, looking at the other buildings and what they're doing, I would suggest pulling that down and making it a blade sign similar to the other buildings that's perpendicular to the entry sign, so that you do have one sign, the entry sign faces south, and then you have a perpendicular blade sign that faces east and west. That's similar to what's happening on the buildings on Sheridan.
Okay.
But it seems like maybe if you could bring that one sign back, that would be the best.
Okay, yeah, that'd be fine.
In your,
Include that?
well, that's part of my line of questioning, is trying to figure out what to do with it. I would suggest continue item 2E and then vote on everything else.
Okay.
Continue item 2E to the next meeting.
So I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the condition that A, the applicant receive a variance to the maximum directional signage area, number of accessory signs, and the maximum sign area regulations of the Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code, and B, continue item 2E for further review and approval, as well as 2, I also move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance to the maximum directional sign area, number of accessory signs, and the maximum sign area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code on the terms that 2E is reviewed and approved as well.
Do I have a second on there? That was very well done.
Yeah, that was very nice. I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. And then one more. Any comments, Corey? I'm learning. Okay. Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the condition that A, the applicant receive a variance to the maximum directional sign area regulations of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code, and 2, also move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance to the maximum sign area regulations, Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code.
Thank you for that.
I'll second.
Connie seconded it. All in favor? Any opposed? Thanks a lot for being here. And we're very excited about your project. Next item, is it okay if we do these now? Okay. Next item would be the items A.
No, let's do F.
Oh, you want to do F first?
Is the tree, the item H is where the streetcar stuff begins.
So 300 Southwest 7th Street is the applicant present. This would be the Central Park
Yeah, this is
tree package.
This is the early tree package for the Central Park. The design team wants to procure the trees well in advance of the park construction so that they can get larger trees.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Gav McMillan from Hargraves Associates. We're the lead consultant on the Downtown Public Park. And as Lisa just mentioned, we are here under unusual circumstances. The plant material we want to procure is very difficult. The market is in very short supply at the moment. So we want to take the opportunity to procure the trees so we have them at the time and need for construction. So I want to take you through the design basis that was used to come up with the tree list and get your comments on them.
And real quick, the book that they provided wasn't included in your packet, but we hand-delivered them in the last couple of days.
Right.
Sure. Thank you. Whoops. Scroll. Okay, thank you. There we go. I'll give you a quick overview of the park, talk about how we actually came up with the tree list, and then run through each of the 8 zones we have for thematic zones for the trees, and then get your comments. So the driving force of this is the project schedule as an overview. We are in kind of halfway in the final plans and specs. The Park Subcommittee and the MAPS Advisory Board and City Council approved the preliminary design report back in September, and we've used that as a basis to move forward on the tree supply. The park itself will be out to bid, we hope, in fall next year, with construction going through the end of 2016 through 17 and 18. So this is a great opportunity in a short market to get those trees involved. To give you an update on the plan itself, we have been through the last 6 months a process of refining the plan from the master plan itself through the preliminary design report, with the involvement of the subcommittee, but also the preferred operator of the park, which is Myriad Botanic Gardens. So it's been a collaborative effort in moving through the process. We have at the moment in the upper park about 953 trees. And that is driven by not only design intent, but also shade requirements, and to increase porosity in the park itself. The diagram on the right is looking at our best guess at what years the trees would need to be come to site. What are the early trees in 2017 versus the later trees in 2018. The purpose of this is twofold. One, we will guarantee that we will have trees at the time of construction. And 2, it'll actually save the project money by buying them now and getting 2 years of advanced growth off-site before they come on-site. So all these trees now exist somewhere else, and it's the idea to purchase them and grow them for 2 years before they come to site. It's a very limited area that we are pulling from. We've heard quite clearly that Oklahoma City is a difficult place for trees to grow in. And a way around that is we actually formed an expert panel to advise us on the tree selection process, and I'll just run through those members there. So we met twice for half-day sessions that we worked through. We locked the doors, and we worked through the tree list with these people. So Lou Anneller, former director of the Botanic Gardens at at OSU, excuse me, Mark Bays with the state urban forester, Brian Doherty with the City Community Foundation, Dave Edwards, also from OSU, Maureen Heflin, who's the director of Myriad Botanic Gardens, Brent Wall, who was with City Parks, who is now with his own company, Loud Design, and is advising us as a sub-consultant, and Ray Reedon with OSU on all the bugs that eat trees in Oklahoma. So we had some very good sessions, and it refined the plant list as we went through. And the trees themselves, we basically have 9 different thematic areas within the park. One of them is the existing trees, and 8 of them are the new trees we are planting. So here are the 9 areas color-coded. Number 1 is existing trees retained, and I'll talk briefly about that next, but most of the existing trees retaining are around Union Station. Number 2 is the flowering trees, so these are kind of our accent trees that pop up in different areas. 3 is littoral trees, so around the fringe of the new lake. And number 4 is our streetscape trees on Hudson. And also number 6 is our streetscape trees on Robinson. Number 5 is our woodland trees, which is our biggest category. So the woodland weaves its way all the way through the upper park. Number 7 is our LA trees, which define the promenade. So shade along there is very important. And number 8 is our boulevard trees, so they front the boulevard, the proposed boulevard on the north side of the park. And lastly, number 9 is our shade trees that happen on the grassed area around the large oval here that are used during events. So I'll go through the same process we went through the tree panel. So we have one sheet. There you go, I got a virus already. We have one sheet that kind of explains the intent of what we're dealing with, and the next sheet is what we actually decided on as a consensus group. So existing trees, as I said, there was an arborist report that was done for the entire upper park. There was about 104 trees before the buildings were demolished upon the site. He recommended only 9 trees were suitable for saving, and 8 of those 9 are actually around Union Station. One of those other trees has subsequently died. So that was a lesson in how tough trees need to be in Oklahoma City. So we are retaining, as you can see here, some of the oaks, the trees that are actually on 2 frontages of Union Station now. Number 2 was the flowering trees. So this is our accent trees that pop up in lawns or in planting areas. So this is a little bit of color, smaller scale, and sometimes as an understory tree as well. So we bounced around a kind of a long list here. A lot of this was about selecting the correct hybrids and cultivars. What we settled on was a group of 9 that starts with the Oklahoma redbud, has a few magnolias for winter, and the default tree is the crepe myrtle, and also the crab apples, the varieties that will actually work here. So as I said before, these trees kind of pop up in feature areas at the side of Union Station, the lawn areas here, and also the boulevard gardens here. The littoral trees around the lake, a much shorter list here. So our lake is about 3.5 acres. It has a fringing zone, which is wet and dry. So bald cypress, obviously, a good selection there. But other trees that like wet feet as the lake varies in elevation. What we decided on a short list was the water oak, bald cypress, the swamp white oak, sweet gum, and the black gum in a few little areas here. We didn't want to go overboard on this because in the lower park, it also has areas that will have wetter feet and low points. So we wanted the bigger cottonwoods and things that would be associated with larger water to be reserved for the lower park and not do those in the upper park. The Hudson Street streetscape, we looked at the tree palette that's used for Project 180. So we've done things that are consistent with that. Our choices on this street could have been the Shumat oak, lacebark elm in its 2 varieties. We settled on the lacebark elm basically because we wanted the east and west side of the park to be defined by the same tree. And we wanted Robinson to be the tree that continues along the full length of Robinson. So at the moment, the Project 180 trees that are planted along Robinson are the lacebark elm. So we've continued those down past our project, and eventually the new convention center on their side of the street of Robinson will use the same tree as well. So that the whole of Robinson will be consistent in terms of the Project 180 street trees. A woodland tree, which is our most largest group here. The challenge here was to pick up on the cross timbers theme that is native to Oklahoma City, but also vary that a little bit with some short-term impact because most of the oaks that are associated with the cross timbers are slow-growing, start quite small, are difficult to find. So we have those, but we also have supplemented that with some live oaks because we can get those in some sort of suitable size to start with, provide a little shade, and also some color, some green leaves during winter as well. So this has probably the biggest list of trees associated with it, from medium to large and small to medium as well. And this is the group that we settled on, which reflects some of that, but also has some interesting things that some of the arborists came up with. The Osage orange, it's quite an interesting tree, not to use in lawn areas, but tucked away, it actually accents some of the things. Some of the more typical things found, the blackjack oak, the bur oak, and the red oak. Post oak, also cross timbers, but another good default tree is the chinkapink oak as well. The understory trees underneath the larger trees, again, accenting the Texas redbud, which is also the Oklahoma redbud. Some of the things that are a little more difficult to find, that buying these trees in 2 years in advance, we can actually find them. But the rusty black haw is one thing that we do hope to get and use on the site. And some evergreen for winter as well, the deciduous holly. And again, these are the trees that will have some leaves or color during fall. So as I mentioned before, the live oak, both the one that's found from here down to Texas, but also one that's unique in this region, the Quartz Mountain live oak, which is difficult to find and cultivate as well. As I said before, Robinson, we're going to extend the Project 180 street tree, the LAM, all the way down, and the intent is for the convention center to use that on their side of the street as well. So they'll be consistent. A promenade alley, so the promenade is the main pedestrian and bike circulation through the middle of the park. So short-term shade is important here. So we have the short list here with cedar elm, shoemart oak, and water oak. For consistency, we wanted all these trees to be reasonably symmetrical and similar all the way throughout. So we thought water oak would be suitable initially, but everyone thought that shoemart oak we would actually get a consistent row of trees either side for the numbers that we need. So we did settle on shoemart oak here all the way down, and that may be repeated in the lower park too when we get there. The boulevard tree that will front the boulevard, for those of you who remember the plan, it's not only a street tree, but we also have a cafe that actually sits amongst these trees, and the outdoor dining happens under a shade shelter of that cafe, but also under these trees. There's the idea of bocce ball courts that happen in the decomposed ground around these trees. So we have a very short list for this one. The Coffee Kentucky tree, London plane tree. Everyone thought that to get the reasonable size and the impact that we need initially, that we should stick with London plane tree. So we'll be working with the Public Works Department is now appointing a landscape architect to look at the street tree planting on the entire boulevard. So we'll be working with them to ensure that there's a consistency between one side of the street and the other for the width of the park. And our last area was the shade trees in the big lawn oval. This is the oval that will fit a soccer pitch inside of it, but also for concerts and events. It can fit up to 10 to 15,000 people. And a lot of what we did to the preliminary design report was actually increase the number of trees around this area, so when there's smaller events on, you can have a picnic and sit in the shade of the trees. So here we were looking for shade trees, but not too shady that would shade out the lawn growth underneath. So that was our short list. And what we settled on in here is the maple. We did actually use the coffee Kentucky here after not using it on the boulevard. The Chinese pistache is very hardy here, Japanese pagoda, and a few elm trees. So again, we're improving the diversity of this. It's not just one or two species, but we have 6 species here. Just to put the trees in context, one of our goals was, not only obviously to have shade and initial impact, because of the mission of Myriad Botanical Gardens, diversity was very important. So we have a very diverse tree selection, which will be carried over in the understory planting when we get to it. The park itself, just to give you some idea, only 20% of the park area is paved. So in terms of the relationship between the tree canopy and our impervious area, it far exceeds any of the requirements that are documented. It's important for us to get your feedback and to be able to go out to bid and test the market to secure these trees in time for construction. So I welcome any comments that you have, and I am going to rely on Brent to help me out on some of the tree species in particular. So please ask away.
Connie?
Well, I guess it's my turn. Well, I think you've got a great list of trees. I would have added more, and I would have also tried to keep you from restricting yourselves by adding some of the cultivars. But if you can get them, it's great. I have no problems with anything you've taken. I did want to know what size trees you're going to be buying.
We have a range. So again, the diversity is important, and as you know, in the tree community, there's always a debate between, some of these guys are thinking 30 and 50 years in the future. Some other people are thinking 1 to 2 years. Is the tree providing enough shade? So we've had to balance that. So say in areas that, say for the promenade and the boulevard, where initial shade is very important, we are getting those in 4 to 6 inch by the time that they come to be planted. So they will be impactful from day one. In other areas where the initial impact is not so critical, so in some of the woodland areas, we will be only going 1 to 2 inch. And that's not only driven by the intent of that, but that it's just not available in any larger size right now. So we have anything from 1 to 6 inches.
And then, so that's the size that you're bidding at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they'll be grown where? In a nursery or in?
The idea in the specification that will go out to bid, the idea is that if there is one growing source, we actually limited the growing source, so the trees can be grown elsewhere, but they have to be grown within a defined boundary, roughly 200 miles away. So they'll all be consolidated in one place for at least 1 to 2 years within the same climatic zone as Oklahoma City. So this was a key requirement from particularly the state and the lessons learned on some of the Project 180 street trees, where some trees were coming from many, many states away just because they had no choice. So the provenance is very well defined in the specification, but they do all need to be held within 200 miles of Oklahoma City for at least 1 year. So they will all be brought to one location for 1 year.
So you may be buying them from different places, but they'll all come to one place.
Yes.
And one person is responsible for maintaining
Correct.
those?
Correct.
Good. I think that's great. I have no problems with any of the trees, including the junipers.
Great. I will be recusing myself from this vote. Do we have a motion at all?
I move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
Second.
Okay. That was Connie and Corey. And I was remiss, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this? That being noted, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, the next item, 6G, is the applicant present? 627 North or Southwest 6th Street. Laura?
Hi, I'm Kina Oden. I'm here on behalf of St. Laguna. I'm also a realtor here in Oklahoma City, and the only reason I bring that up is because I specialize in the historic and downtown urban areas, and I've done a handful of renovations in the historic areas, and it's my opinion that this house it wouldn't be cost effective to salvage it. The cost would exceed its value. We are restoring one down the street that is, in my opinion, significant enough to restore, but this one is not, in my opinion. And I have some pictures of the interior. It's been dilapidated for quite some time, never been maintained. It's a flop house, or, there's squatters there. It's the neighbors are always having to call the police, and it's in poor condition. So.
Okay, great. Before you leave, I need you to write your name on the sheet of paper in front of you. Laura, did you have any comments on this?
No, we just provided the information we typically provide. This house is before you because it was listed in the intensive level survey as potentially contributing to a district if one was established in that area. There have been significant demolitions in the area. As I referenced, there's a lot of vacant lots across the street next to it. There are some that are being worked on, and I was excited when she told me that on the phone because I recognized the one she was talking about, which is a very large structure just down the street, and provided the information about the Court of Shore and what that plan was proposing for this area. And so if you have any questions about any of that.
Okay, great. Any questions from the committee? Any comments from the gallery? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the demolition based on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Connie. All in favor? Any opposed? Your application has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. 6H. Now, we wanted to start with H and then move up to the other ones. Okay. Hi.
Good morning.
Morning. Lisa, do you want to do a preamble or?
Sure, I'll do a short preamble. So the next couple of case items are the substations that are the power source for the streetcar, and then we'll also talk about the streetcar stops and locations. So there's 3 substation locations on the agenda. 2 of them are toward the back of the lots, like by the alley, and so they have in my opinion, they're not quite as critical in terms of appearance because they're at the back of the lot at the alley. But this one, the first one we're hearing, is right on the street on Hudson, just south of 4th. And we talked with the applicant. We've had several conversations. Staff has had several conversations with the applicant and the MAPS office about where best to locate these. And one consideration is that once it's there, it's there. So taking into consideration any other development that might happen on that lot is important. So we felt pretty strongly that this needed to be well screened by an opaque, tall, sturdy, attractive enclosure. But I'll let Doug take it from there.
Thank you. My name is Doug Smith. I'm with Jacobs Engineering, project manager on the streetcar project. I wanted to give you a little bit background about what these traction power substations do. They are, by the way, we are at 60% design level, so the drawings that are in your packets, both for the site plans for the traction power substations and also for the platforms, which we'll talk about in a minute, are all at the 60% level and under review at the MAP staff, Public Works, Utilities Department, and so on. What we're really trying to do is get a confirmation of our concepts, that we're on the right track with where we have things, and of course the locations where we have them. The locations, as Lisa already alluded to, we have one at 4th and Hudson, one on 7th Street between Broadway and Robinson, and another one up on 11th Street near Dewey. The one at 4th and Hudson is closer to the street. There are a couple of other things going on in that property where we have to cut the corner with the track, and so we'll have a property acquisition there. And we also need a little bit of property at the adjacent platform there. So we have actually 3 different things going on that corner because of several things. So in terms of the spacing of the substations, they are the electrical feed to the power to the streetcar. So they are kind of spaced out throughout the Midtown area between 4th Street, 11th Street, 11th, and 11th Street, 7th. And basically the way they work is OG&E will feed with probably somewhere around 12,000 volts and put a transformer in this area to reduce it down to 480 volts. Then our substation, which is kind of a walk-in switchgear, will transform it to about 750 volts DC, and that's what we'll put on the wire to feed the vehicle. So basically what this TPSS does is that very function. It has some maintenance access that's needed, so we need to locate it so that maintenance crews both from OG&E and from Embark can get in and enter that switchgear as needed to be able to work on it. So that's basically how they work. We have talked to Lisa and the staff about screening options, and we're open to considering that and continuing to work with them on the best way to screen that. We have shown you an option, this one at 4th Street, which is on the slide that's on the screen. One concept of screening it with a CMU split-face block with some highlight features, and so we're very open to that kind of alternative, especially with it being so close to Hudson. And also mentioned that we have contacted the landowners at these sites and made them aware of this, but we haven't started the right-of-way acquisition process because we want to make sure, again, that our locations and our concepts were valid before we went any further with that. So that's kind of the update on the traction power. I'll talk more about the platforms when we get to that item.
Okay, great. Any comments, questions from the committee?
Well, as I was going through my packet, I looked at this and I thought, it's not a very attractive building. And then I went to our first item that came up today about the screening of the walk-in cooler, and there was a beautiful quote there that said, a screen should be constructed with brick the same color as the building, may better comply with the regulations. So maybe at this location the CMUs work, but I think we should look at each location and the design of each screening material differently so that it would match their location. And I don't know if that was your plan?
Yeah, this item is just for the screen at this location.
Okay.
And the other ones...
The other ones, yeah, I had it all X'd out, but it wasn't clear to me if that was what their plan, if we're looking at a prototype design.
For this case, this item that we're hearing right now, the application is this screen wall for this location. For the other two, the proposal was for like a wood stockade type fence, but I am actually not convinced that it needs a screen. And I want to talk about that in those case items, because it's, the substation is essentially a steel metal enclosure. Once you put a screen on it, then you have to allow more room for clearance and access. So the wall gets pretty big, but it could just be considered a self-contained item. But that's for the other two. For this one, it's a big transformer. It actually has its own transformer next to it.
Okay, Lisa, can I ask a question? Do we actually have responsibility for the aesthetics of this, or just the placement of it?
For the aesthetics of this screen wall,
Of the
yes.
screen, but not the others?
For the screening of the substations is a fence, and there are guidelines and regulations on fences that are under DDRC's purview.
So we would be responsible for the aesthetics of those other ones as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We're open to options. What we proposed here is split-face CMU. It would be colored block. So, we just go from available palette of colored CMU block split-face options.
The specific palette that is proposed matches the garage at 4th and Robinson. So I would say I'm not a big fan of that exterior. Does this match it? Yes. We did actually have a lot of discussion on, the color of downtown is tan stone, generally. That's the color to match. We talked about, is it more appropriate to match the building where Thai Kitchen is? Is it more appropriate to match the transit station, which is a kind of orangey red brick? As a group, we couldn't come up with any rationale stronger than matching the garage this is adjacent to. Yeah.
That's the impression I got when I looked at this, that there was an attempt to match the garage on the west side. As far as how that happens, the garage itself, the way that block's laid out right now is there's a color accent on the vertical elements that occur in the structure of the garage, and then there are punched openings between those vertical elements. So with this approach, I think CMU is a very sensible and logical material to screen a transformer. So taking that route, maybe looking at the garage and highlighting the vertical elements of this screen, those columns, similar to how the garage has their color accents on the vertical elements. And then with the west side of this screen being right on the sidewalk, I would ask if there's a way to maybe break up that wall just a little bit more, looking at the punched openings that are in the garage to the east. Maybe that split face kind of sets back in the center, just to give it a little bit more relief because it's right on the sidewalk.
I agree, in particular, because I'm seeing what you've drawn over there, and it looks so much better than this. This is just, that looks very nice.
Pass that down here, Corey. Okay, are any comments as far as that's concerned?
We were definitely willing to take those comments into consideration and work with staff on making it look like you described.
Is there anyone from the gallery that would like to speak to this? Do we have any way to craft a motion on that?
I'll also point out in the staff report that because a fence is a wall, is a screen wall is a fence, and there are limits on the height of fences in downtown, in the front yard and the side yard, which this exceeds because we want it to cover the whole substation. So there's language in here that they would need. The fence regulations also state that the fence needs to be an open type fence, but for this wall, I believe it needs to be solid, so there's variance language. Just wanted to point that out. Yeah, it's 4 feet in the front yard and 8 feet on the side yard. And it's supposed to be an open type picket.
Yeah, I would think it would be much better to screen it off completely than to have an open picket fence.
So, we have a motion?
I motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the conditions that, 1, the applicant obtains a variance from the fence type, material, and height regulations, and 2, there's a continued effort to work with the city on the detailing of what's been proposed. And 2, also, I move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from fence type, material, and height regulations.
Okay.
I don't know if it's time to ask, but can we have them bring this design back to us, or is staff ready to?
We're happy to bring it back.
What does that do to your schedule?
We'd like to go to bid in the April-May timeframe, so we've got time to do that. Bring the concept in.
Well, that might be different then.
Then I change my motion and I move to continue this.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Can you restate that continue to December or January? If it's December, we would need it in a
Now,
10
question
days.
about December, do we have a December meeting?
You have
No,
cases.
We have cases.
There are cases for
Okay.
December. But
Is that
can
all
you be
right?
ready for December? Can you have a revised design in about 10 days, or do you need a month?
We can try for December, and if we can't make it, could we have January as a fallback? That'll work.
Okay. Do we need to re-vote on that? Okay. Add to the,
If you restate,
Okay.
restate your motion, please.
I move to continue this item to the next meeting pending available material, if not the meeting thereafter.
Is that okay? All right.
Second.
All in favor? Let's just- Okay. All opposed? Any opposed? Okay. So next one. That would be 5A and B. Lisa, we need some guidance on this.
Okay, item 5A is the site on 7th Street. It's proposed to be located at the, there's St. Paul's Cathedral, and then there's that big parking lot south of St. Paul's. This substation is proposed toward the alley, behind the alley that runs on the south side of that parking lot. So as proposed in the application materials, it was the substation surrounded by a wood stockade fence. What you're looking at is a picture of what the substation looks like without screening. So it's, without the screening, it's a relatively small white metal box. With the screening, it's got a significantly larger footprint. And I would love the committee's opinion on whether the size and the material call more or less attention to it. There's also, Doug, I think you said there may be options for just attaching some sort of screening directly to the substation.
There are some cladding options that can be looked at. I don't have any of those to show you today, but we have started discussions with some of the vendors, and we could continue those discussions if...
But like what? Like other types of metal panel? Like, yeah.
Oh,
Lisa, what we were talking about was like a vinyl wrap. Yeah, I'm Jesse Rush with the MAPS office. I was talking to Lisa earlier, and what we discussed was like a vinyl wrapping for the enclosure.
Like a super graphic?
Yeah, we could do graphics.
Again, I would, one reason, so we had put this on consent docket, but I really would like the committee's opinion on what makes these more or less
I have a
visible.
question, and I'm recusing myself on these items, but is there any danger to the public if you don't screen it? Is there any possible way that anyone could get hurt?
electrical explosion or any hazard like that. They are self-contained, and there are many examples where these are standalone. So, they're designed where the public can freely move around them. They're secured with locked doors. They're walk-in type structures, and they will have security alarms on them. Electrically, they have all the safety features that goes with a substation like this. So it's pretty typical of something that OG&E would have out in the open, where their staff are only able to access it with the appropriate keys and so on.
Is access required on all four sides of each transformer?
It's at least 2 or 3 of the sides. I'm not sure if it's all 4. But that does create the issue that Lisa mentioned, which is the screening would have to have a bit of space around it to be able to get small vehicles in there and get at the open panels when they're maintaining things.
Yeah, it looks like, on one of these pictures, it looks like there's a bunch of warning stickers. Is that required on the outside of this container?
Have you seen these pictures?
Yes.
So does it look like any of these or all of these or just this first one?
They're all good typicals, just in different locations. So, yeah, that's what it would look like.
Is your question whether this is what you're going to see from the street or if that's facing away from the street? Right. Do you know, Jesse? I mean, do you know if this is the side that would face the street, or is this?
We could look at, placing where it would face, where you don't see the stickers. We could look at that for sure. What kind of drives where they're located with the enclosure is we would need to have access to the TPSS. But if we don't have enclosures, then we could look at, placing it differently on the site.
Based on these photos, I don't have a problem with them as well. I think if there is an effort to orient them so that whichever direction your main view from the street is, there's a sensibility made towards that direction. They're pulled off the street. These 2 locations are in the back of a parking lot. I think that would be fine.
Do we have any motions? We have 2 items, 5A and 5B.
And if you don't want this screening, I would clarify in your motion that we're not approving the screening.
Okay. Okay. So on 5A, a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance and as referenced in Section C of the staff report with the following 2 conditions. First, item 1, the installation of the TPSS is approved. And related to item 2, construct a new screen fence, that is not required, but a sensibility to view corridors from the street is.
Well said.
Well said, thank you. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5B?
Can we just play the tape back?
We could.
Okay, 5B. A motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report with the following 2 conditions. That item 1, the installation of the TPSS is approved, and that item 2, the construction of a new screen fencing is not required, but a sensibility to view corridors from the street is.
Nicely said.
Second.
Deja vu. All in favor? Any opposed? Great. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience. And speaking of patience, the next item, 6I, the applicant present.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Gardner with Gardner Architects, 401 Northwest 23rd.
Laura, you want to address the project?
This is a request to build a multi-family, multi-story development on an existing parking lot. I was kind of excited to see this because my very first meeting when I came on back in March, you guys were looking at an adjacent building and some modifications, and they had made those modifications, so I saw them when I went out to take pictures. There's a lot happening up here. You can see on the screen the part of the parking lot where this is going, and when you look at the project description, there will be access to the parking garage from the upper floors of this project. There will be the one issue that was included in the staff report dealt with the site distance triangle. As you know, the Downtown Design District regulations and guidelines want the building out at the property line. And when we do that at an intersection like this, we then end up with the potential to be located within the site distance triangle. And so the Public Works Department was consultant, and there's verbiage in here dealing with, they have a concern about the trees and the specific trees that are put out along the streetscape. The concern is as they get larger, they could create a problem with visibility. There is an enormous amount of right-of-way up in this area that when you look at the, when you look at the plan, this is the issue here, but you can see how much right-of-way there is because the property line is this far off of 11th Street. So we've included verbiage relative to that issue of encroaching in the site distance triangle. Samples are brought here. We have paper, the paper included in here dealing with colors and the materials. And this is continuing residential development that right now is across the street. And so it's kind of, there's a lot of momentum up there, and this is continuing on that momentum.
Okay, thanks. Do you want to do a quick presentation? How would you like to do this?
Laura touched on most of it, I think, which is good.
You want to give us some visuals?
I've got a few visuals here which are basically kind of duplicating some things that are already in your packet. But as Laura mentioned, this is kind of an infill project right there in the southeast corner of 11th and Chartel. It's historically been a service parking lot. The project primarily, the primary facade is west-facing, kind of fronts Chartel, in an effort to continue the placemaking synergies and the momentum that's happening on the west side of Midtown. Again, as Laura mentioned, we're capitalizing the existing parking structure as a way to park the project versus introducing any new parking to the site. Just in general terms, the architecture, the four-story wood frame multifamily project draws the inspiration from adjacent pasture building, and specifically the 1958 addition with its kind of clean, crisp architectural lines. We're also drawing from the Lift project directly adjacent on the west side of Chartel with a material palette, but just briefly, we have a charcoal brick masonry base onto which we've cantilevered a cementitious stucco massing, where we are using a cementitious painted vertical siding highlighted with Nichiha product to help articulate the ins and outs that we're proposing for the architecture, primarily along the west facade. The Nichiha is also accenting the outdoor spaces on the third floor, which the project is comprised of 27 units, 18 of which are two-story, two-bed townhomes. We have 6 flats on the north, as well as three-bedroom, two-story units. I think of note would be the fact that all the units along the ground floor are kind of walk-ups, so you'll have multiple front doors along both Northwest 11th as well as Chartel, which we think is a great asset to bring energy to what has historically been a pretty dead street. So beyond that, I have actual samples of some of the products if you guys would like to see those, but we're proposing an eider white stucco mass with a repose gray, which is a light gray, painted cementitious, the siding, and then the natural cedar color of the Nichiha accent. We have the white window frames in the white mass above the ground floor. The ground floor has a darker window and door frame. The street trees, et cetera, are proposed to match what's already going across the street on the lift in terms of the streetscape. I think, just as a general term, the material palette is, we're really seeking to provide a palette that is durable and allows the project to remain crisp and clean for multiple years, so not a lot of maintenance required. Any questions?
Well, I have questions. So what's not shown on your site plan or your landscape plan are the existing trees, which there's 4 30-year-old lace bark elm trees that look in perfect condition that you're tearing out. And I just wanted you to speak to that.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is create a street that is kind of consistent with all the other projects that are going on. Are you talking about the one specifically on the north?
I'm talking about the trees that are streetscape trees that are already existing that continue both along Chartel and along 11th.
I think they would encroach on the building on the west facade, because we are kind of building to our property line, and we'll be seeking a revocable permit so that we can project the upper floors above the ground level. So I think it's
and then on the north side? The north side?
On the north side? I mean, we can look at potentially keeping those trees. I think we've got Brent, actually, is here, is going to be helping us kind of finalize all the landscaping plans.
Oh, good, so the landscape plan is not done, because I was going to say,
Right, because we also have the courtyard, which is internal to the project, but we're still working with Brent on the final details of that.
Your application was for landscaping. Are you saying that what you submitted is not what you want to put on?
No, I think that there's probably some room for us to continue to refine it if that's desired, and we can kind of come back with that.
Sure, any changes or refinements that are made after it's approved will need to come back
Right.
for a revision.
Okay.
It's confusing to the committee when you say that's not what we want to do.
Well, yeah, I don't think that the design intent remains the same, but I think we're open to.
well, I think you're going to have a hard time getting some of those feather reed grasses to grow in full shade. But I also think that you should make some effort to save these trees, because they are in perfect condition, and at least 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, it just kills me to see just knock it down because it doesn't match the building. Really, it matches the building fine. Are you going to irrigate this site?
Yes.
Oh, I noticed the other landscape plans that we've seen today, irrigation was specifically listed in the items for consideration. Is that something that's needed or not?
It's a requirement
Oh,
that landscaped areas be irrigated. Yeah, this one it says install street trees, landscaping, and irrigation.
oh, okay.
You could approve it as is, you could continue the landscape item, you could condition it that some of the trees remain, whatever you want to do.
Well, you've given a lot of consideration to the building and the way it's going to look and the way it sits on the lot and the materials that it's made out of, and you've not given any consideration to the landscaping. So I would request that we have the landscape plan come back to us for approval. And so I could make a motion unless somebody else has comments.
Oh, I have a comment, and there's really nothing we can do about this, but I think it's very sad that this building will be obscuring the view entirely of the parking garage, because it is very elegant and an interesting structure, especially the rounded ramps. I think that's unfortunate.
Well, do you still see it on the parking structure from the north and the east?
Well, you see the parking structure, but you lose sight of the ramps, the rounded ramps.
Okay.
I mean, that is an interesting, so the airspace above your property line actually has the ramp going through it, according to your drawing.
Correct. The property line essentially follows the garage access at the ground level.
Where is that? There. I didn't make the little curve on my square when I put that on that, because if you look at the site plan, you can see where the, well, it's kind of faint, but if you look at your copy, you can see where the rounded part of the parking garage is.
Right. Yeah, but it hangs over good. How did that property get divided off? Has that always been divided off as a separate piece of property, or has it just been?
It was a lot split.
Huh?
It was a lot split.
It was a lot split recently. Interesting. Okay. Does anybody in the gallery have any comments? Any other comments from the committee? We have a motion.
Okay, I'll approve, make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinances referenced in Section C of the staff report, with the condition that the landscape plan be brought back to us for approval. Is that right?
Do you need to say anything about
Yeah,
The street?
a date, or when would you have your final landscape? About when?
About what, we can bring it back for the January.
So any comment about the street trees? Did you already mention that?
Well, if they save the
They're going to
existing
bring
trees.
us back anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, do we have a second? That was Chuck. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Next item, and I believe this is the last item. Am I right? Item 6J. Hi there.
Hello again.
Welcome back.
So I can tell you a little bit about the streetcar platforms. They are, there are 22 of them total in the 4.5-mile loop around the city. 5 of those in Bricktown, 17 of those are in downtown and midtown. The general concept regarding the spacing of the platforms is that they occur every couple of blocks. We want them to be very accessible to public wanting to get on the streetcar. They're also spaced in couplets so that the route, we have a couplet, Broadway Robinson, 10th and 11th Street, and so on, Reno Sheridan, so that if someone wants to get off the streetcar at a stop, go have some lunch, and then catch the streetcar going in the opposite direction to go back where they came from, they only have to cross over across that couplet to be able to get in there. And the graphics that's up right now, you can see how they pair up pretty well. And so that's part of the logic behind the spacing. And this has been reviewed with the Transit Subcommittee and the MAPS Advisory Board. So the other thing I'll mention is that there is a general idea to place a platform on the near side of an intersection so that the traffic flow, if the streetcar is stopped, cars will have to, if there's not a passing lane, the cars will back up, and they won't back up as opposed to a far side platform where they could back up into the intersection and cause a traffic blockage. So Public Works always prefers a near side platform to an intersection. And one example of that would be at 8th and Broadway, where we're on the south side of 8th and not on the north side of 8th. So that's a general concept. In terms of the details of the platforms themselves, they do have a shelter, relatively small, similar to a bus stop shelter. And it does have there's a 14-inch high platform. The streetcar is a level boarding, and so the platforms will be built up to a 14-inch curb so that you can walk right onto the streetcar. There are stairs on one side of the platform and ramps on the other for accessibility. There are railings around to create an isolation area for people that are waiting on the streetcar from people that are just passing on the sidewalk. And that also provides a leaning rail for public that are waiting there. The platform layout that you see there in concept is standard for all 22 locations. The geometry, the dimensions are all the same for all 22. The only thing that's different is where it goes along the street. Some of the features of that platform include a lit pylon marker, and also there is a potential vinyl wrap that could be used around the glass sides of that modular enclosure. Some of those features are being reviewed by Embark because they are in the middle of a marketing program for the overall branding of the system. And so those are some of the things that they're looking at tweaking as they look at their advertising and revenue options for the platforms. The right-of-ways are all within public right-of-way, so we're just basically modifying the sidewalk area or extending the curb out to meet the track line. And there is one example or one instance where we do have to get some additional private right-of-way, and that's actually the platform at 4th and Hudson because we don't have enough sidewalk space, so we're going to need to get a little bit of private property for that. That's a general description, and happy to answer any questions.
The vinyl wrap, would that go on the roof glass as well? As the,
It could. It wasn't conceptualized that way, so it's an option that Embark is looking at.
I think having some kind of graphic is a good idea, actually mainly for shading, given how much glass this has and how Oklahoma gets in the summer. Having an area of refuge in the shade will, I think, allow people more comfort and more willingness to wait for the streetcar if they have an area of shade within it. And then the structure of the stop itself, is the steel planned to be galvanized or just painted steel?
I believe that's an aluminum modular.
Okay. Okay. And one last question: the color of the signage, the stop, and the district signage. Just for curiosity's sake, is the color representative of the district that it's in, or the line of the trolley car that it's on?
That's a good question, and it is something that Embark is looking at. The original concept was that the color as shown was a consistent color throughout the entire route anywhere in the city, so that a rider could look for that pylon and identify where they need to go to catch the streetcar. But I don't believe that decision's been finalized, and Embark, again, as part of their marketing campaign and talking to potential sponsors, they are interested in what they have to say about that, and so, again, trying to fit that in with the people that are most interested in the system.
Any other questions? Any questions from the gallery? Do we have a motion?
Doug, could you, you said there were some missing addresses from the agenda.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that
Just
your...
read those off, so.
The item that's,
I know
the specific item that's in the packet, the staff report is what I'm trying to say, has a list of the 17 stops in downtown and midtown in there. That list doesn't match what's actually in your agenda. There are 3 addresses that are missing from the agenda item. Those are 337 Northwest 11th, 1125 North Dewey, and 402 Northwest 10th.
Do you have drawings for all of those in the packet?
The drawings are in the packet. I asked him to read them off. We'll have to bring those back. They weren't noticed because they aren't on the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll bring those back, or they might be administratively removable.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Thank you. Do we have a motion? Oh, who's working on it?
I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
Second.
Okay, that's Corey and Connie again. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thanks for your extreme patience.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't quite hear you. The planned opening day is mid-2018.
Wow.
We
Along with some of those trees that are being delivered about then, too. Great. Thank you very much for being here and being patient with the process. We have no other business. We have communications, and this meeting has been so long that unless there's something really big on the administrative approvals, anything? No? Okay. No? Okay. On October 27th, the City Council adopted the resolution for the demolition criteria. That's a big deal.
Very exciting. So applications submitted after November 30th would follow.
We have a commission and committee workshop.
December 11th, it's on your calendar. Paula sent out we sent out an email a couple months ago, and Paula just sent out an invitation. Very similar to last year, but this year, Planning Commission will be there and Board of Adjustment, so I think it'll be
that's great.
Extremely interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Comments from the committee members? Happy Thanksgiving from me to you. Thank you. And our next meeting is December 17th. We already have the caseload.
We have cases.
5 or 6.
Downtown is busy.
Good. That's important. This was a long meeting. Thank you guys very much. And thanks for being here.